Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel Indian Pharma Guide. Today we will discuss about a basic introduction of chromatography, types of chromatography and some terminologies used in chromatography. First one, what is chromatography? Chromatography is a technique for separating mixtures into their components in order to analyze, identify, purify and or quantify the mixtures or components. That means chromatography is a technique used to separate complex mixtures into individual components. If we have taken any of the sample, it contains complex components, then we need to separate that complex components into individual components or single components. So this process is called as a chromatography, and the technique used to separate complex components into individual components is called as a chromatographic techniques. Here two phases are using in this process. They are the stationary phase and the mobile phase. Stationary phase is in a standard position and mobile phase is in a moving position. Next one, uses for chromatography. Analysis. Examine a mixture, its components and the relation to one another component. Identify. Determine the identity of a mixture or components based on the known components. Purify. Separate components in order to isolate one of interest for further study. So quantify, we need to determine the amount of a mixture or components present in the sample. Some of the mechanisms used in the chromatography. So one is the adsorption, partition, ion exchange and size exclusion. So we will see about the first one, adsorption. So adsorption means based on the relative polarity. So this adsorption works on the relative polarities only. And compounds have the high affinity towards the stationary phase, travels slower, and components having the lesser affinity towards the stationary phase travels faster. So no two components have the same affinity for a combination of the stationary phase, mobile phase and other conditions. This is about the adsorption. Next one is the partition. Partition means based on the relative solubility. Absorption chromatography we discussed about the based on the relative polarities, but in partition it is based on the relative solubilities. Solutes will be distributed according to their partition coefficients. So based on their partition coefficients of the components. So these partition chromatography will work. So components which have the more soluble in the stationary phase travel slower, and components which are the less soluble in the stationary phase travels faster. Here also no two components have the same partition coefficient for a particular combination of the stationary phase, mobile phase and other conditions. This is about the adsorption and partition chromatography. Next one is the ion exchange chromatography. So stationary phase contains a fixed charged groups and mobile counter ions. So stationary phase contains a fixed charged groups and mobile counter ions. That means it has contains both positive, that means cations, and anions also. So both ion groups are present. So counter ion exchange with ions of the solute. So reversible exchange of the ions takes place between the similarly charged ions of solute in the mobile phase and that of an ion exchange resin. So actually in ion exchange chromatography, stationary phase anedi we can use only the ion exchange resin. Okay. So next one is the size exclusion chromatography. So retention depends on the extent to which the solute molecules are trapped in the pores of the inner stationary phase. Smaller molecules diffuses into the pores of the stationary phase, travels slower. Larger molecules do not enter the pores of the stationary phase, travels faster. So next one is the classification of chromatography is mainly divided into three types. One is on the basis of interaction of the solute to the stationary phase, on the basis of the chromatographic bed shape, on the basis of the physical state of the mobile phase. So first one, on the basis of the interaction of the solute to the stationary phase are again divided into three types. One is adsorption, partition, ion exchange, size exclusion. Next one is on the basis of the chromatographic bed shapes. It has again divided into two types, two-dimensional, three-dimensional. Two-dimensional examples, thin layer chromatography and paper chromatography, and three-dimensional example, column chromatography. Basis of physical state of the mobile phase. It is divided into three types, liquid chromatography, supercritical fluid chromatography and gas chromatography. The basic terminologies we have to know in chromatography. First one is the influent, effluent, elution, eluent and eluent. First one, influent. Influent means the liquid entering the column and effluent means the liquid leaving the column. So next one is elution. Elution is the process by which the adsorbed ions are removed from the column. So eluent, the solution used for elution. So eluate, the solution obtained as a result of elution.